Here's a clip from the Southwestern Lead app.
This whole presentation came from a book I read a long time ago called Non-Manipulative Selling, which I thought was kind of a cool title. Non-Manipulative Selling by Tony Alessandra. So I'll give him credit. I started to realize that people are wired differently. God gave us all different personalities. And the faster that you can find out who you're dealing with and connect with them, the more effective that you're going to be. Or if you've ever met somebody for the first time that you're like, I just felt yee around them. It was not comfortable talking to them. Has that happened to anybody? Or have you met anybody for the first time that you just instantly clicked and you're just like, wow, I feel like I know you. Have you had that happen? Okay, that's what this stuff's all about, which is what I want to cover. Okay? So, let's kind of jump in. Why is this called the chameleon thing? Because chameleons change colors. Correct answer. And what that means is that we have to adapt to our surroundings, the people that we're with, not expect them to adapt to us. Normally, if you know anything about chameleons and you see them sitting on a branch or in a tree, you know, the tree doesn't change color to adapt to the lizard. So we're going to take the initiative to do that. Okay? So, you've heard of the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? The golden rule. Well, Alessandro in his book said, well, you know, there's even a platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would like to be done unto. Does that make sense a little bit? So here's what we got to figure out when we meet somebody for the first time. You need to figure out first, is this person a high responsive person or a low responsive person? In other words, high verbal, high facial expressions, high outgoing, or kind of quieter, lower, a little more difficult to read. Do you understand that concept, what I mean by responsive, right? High responsive people have trouble in poker. Low responsive people don't have problems. They have poker faces. You don't really know what they're thinking. You know, I'm not good at poker. I'm high responsive. So when I get a bad hand, I'm like, okay. That would be a high responsive person. A low responsive person looks at their hand and goes, and that's what you get. You got to figure out, is this person high assertive? Are they assertive? Not aggressive, although that's a good indicator if they're aggressive. They're very assertive. Do they like to take charge, or are they low assertive? Okay? Would they like to run the show, be in charge? If you're in a sales situation, do they kind of like to be the boss of the environment? That would be a high assertive person. Very polite. No, you go ahead here. That's a lower assertive person. All right? Does that kind of, I'm just defining our terms because we're going to use them for the next few minutes. Now, the woman on the screen that you see there, just from that snapshot, what would you say on the high assertive or low assertive? High. She's asserting herself. She's like, you need to listen. Okay, that body language is just telling you something right there. All right? So you're going to become, hopefully, in the area of observing people, a student of the game. Now, the easiest thing of those two things I talked about, responsiveness and assertiveness, the easiest thing to spot first is whether they're highly responsive or not. And that's just, you can look at their face. The minute they open the door, the first few seconds, you're going to be able to start to figure out, is this a high or low responsive person? So let's look, we're going to put this on the y-axis, and let's start with high responsive things you can notice. Animated facial expressions, okay? Again, they do things with their face. Next, I'm going to go fast through these so you don't, I'll send you the PowerPoint if you want. A lot of hand and body movement. They gesture, okay? They move more. So watch for that. Flexible time perspective. Typically, high responsive people are like, yeah, what time's the meeting start? 9 o'clock-ish, 9, whatever. And that punctuality may not be their strong suit, okay? They tell stories and anecdotes. They're good storytellers, typically. Now, and we're using some seriously broad brushes here. So just as you go through this, I know some of you analytical types are like, that's not me, that's me. So you're going to have to just, we're doing kind of a broad brush with this. You won't fit everything perfectly. Typically, high responsive people have little emphasis on facts and details. Typically. They share personal feelings, often. They're contact-oriented, which means they may be huggy or handshaky. They may want to touch a little bit more. And they give you immediate nonverbal feedback. Again, the poker situation is good. You'll be able to see with what they're doing with their face and gestures and sounds, you'll be able to tell. You'll be able to read them, you might say, okay? Now, on the other end, the low end of this y-axis, these are people that are less responsive, and these are things to watch for in that. First, they're somewhat expressionless, okay? Like some of you right now. Some of you are sleepy. You're like, this is awesome. Okay, become more expressionful. It's not a word. Limited hand and body movement. They may be a little more restricted. They may not be flamboyant with their gestures when they're speaking, okay? So watch for that. If they're a little bit more tight into their body, okay, they may be low responsive. They're time disciplined. They may show up on time. They're kind of punctual people because that's important. That's a good thing. Conversation focuses on tasks more than people and stories and things like that. Like, I got through my checklist today. Yeah, it was a good day. But they wouldn't do, yeah, there we go. I got through my checklist today. That was efficient. Okay? Good. They like facts and details. Like facts and details. And they don't share as readily their feelings. It is not to say they don't have feelings. You just don't see them, reverberating off the walls. Okay? So as I'm going through these descriptors, are you starting to kind of peg yourself either on the higher end or on the lower and calmer end? And I got to say, either end is fine. It's not like, oh gosh, it sounds cooler to be on the responsive. I'm going to go with that. Or it sounds, no. So how many people would you say you're on the lower end of our scale here? Just a little more reserved, totally fine. Good, excellent. And I assume by the other show of hands, I just want to give you a chance to raise your hands. High responsive. They're like, yay. They're all waving, jumping up and down. Look at me. Okay. All right. Flakes. Now let's go to the x-axis. We've done the y. You're going to see these are put together in a couple of minutes, and it'll be just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Southwestern Lead is an international leadership program that helps you build skills, gain confidence, and discover new opportunities. With professional coaching, a world-class digital learning platform, and certifications that will enhance your resume or application, Lead sets you apart. We'll show you how to turn success principles into success habits through small group training, one-on-one coaching, and guided action plans to help you apply what you're learning. It takes more than academics to reach your goals. See what one of America's oldest leadership training programs can do for you. Visit southwesternlead.com.
Okay, now let's look at the x-axis. And they're not touchy-feely. Okay, here we go. Assertiveness. Let's start with low assertive people. People that are lower assertive, and now you're going to have to peg yourself on this scale. When you meet them for the first time, they're not as, their eyes will not bore into you. They'll look at you, they'll look away. That's what we mean by intermittent eye contact. Less verbal communication. In other words, they won't talk as much. So you watch for that with Mrs. Jones. They make a little bit more tentative statements, polite, than straight up, directive, bombastic, bleh, here's the deal. Limited gestures, again with hand motions. They're a little quieter. Their voice speed a lot of times is a little bit slower, which is good. A little more monotone. They won't have quite as much fluctuation in the amplitude and timbre and tonality. They're just a little bit more monotone. I just thought I'd use a bunch of cool words for no reason. And they're slower paced, okay? So they're not as excitable, right? Good, that's the lower assertive. Now let's go to the other end. This will become more interesting in a couple minutes. Steady eye contact. They look at you more verbal communication, emphatic statements. More so than tentative. They gesture more, they're louder, they speak more quickly, and they communicate readily. And they're just faster paced. All right? So you got that scale? Now, who is lower assertive on that scale? Probably you would peg yourself. All right, raise your hand. Say we're looking at least half. All right? And now, the more assertive people, raise your hand. You probably already have been raising your hand. It's like, it's my turn. All right, good. Good. So now what do we do with this? Now is where we put this together. Here you've got our scales. You've got the X and Y axis. We're back to plotting graphs. This is so much fun for you math people. And I'm going to go through and describe what each of these 4 quadrants, how it defines the personality style you're dealing with. All right, the top left-hand corner we're going to call amiables. So let's look at the amiables. They're slower paced. They're warm and friendly people. They are supportive people. They prefer first names. They're great listeners. They ask a lot of questions. They share personal feelings. They're relationship-oriented. All right? Now, notice on our scales, these are high responsive, but low assertive on our x-axis. So they're readable people, but they're not stomping in the room, taking charge, spreading out. I want to run this committee. Right? They're going to be great team players. Oh, all right. Let's look at down low. Low assertive, low responsive, we call these analytics, okay, or detectives. Now, analytics are cool. Here is their style. They have a cautious pace. They seek facts and data. They are time disciplined. If the meeting starts at 9:30, they'll be there at 9:30 or earlier. They have a show me attitude. They want proof that what you're saying is true. So, if you're just showing Facebook pictures, they may go, I don't care about your friends. Tell me about the history of the company. What? That's odd. Okay. So, they want precision. They're structured and organized people, typically. And they like solving problems. Absolutely. All right, let's look at another quadrant. Expressives. These are people that are highly outgoing and responsive, easy to read, but also kind of like a command and control person a little bit. They don't mind saying, well, we've got our committee. Who wants to run it? I will. They're those people. All right? So they have a quick pace. They're gregarious. Everybody know what that means? Talkative. Good. They're stimulating to be with. You're kind of like, oh, they're full of energy. When they're having a full of energy day. When they're not, they're crap to be around. But they're time undisciplined. When's the meeting start? I don't know. I mean, that's not just 9:30-ish. It's just, I don't know. Whatever. It starts when I get there. They're spontaneous. Okay? Like to do things on a whim. They're involvement-oriented. They're risk takers. You had that? Those are people that are just like, let's go. And they're probably in this quadrant because they don't need lots of details. They're the opposite of the show me people. I need precision, facts, data, right? Okay, so is this helpful a little bit? You kind of getting it? They have dramatic opinions and actions, and they're enthusiastic people to be around. Okay, I'm going to ask you in a minute where you are. Just remember, if you're like, okay, which quadrant am I? Start with the y-axis, figure out how high or how low you are on that, or near the middle, and then do the assertive scale. And then as those two intersect those lines, and you figure out, that's my quadrant. Let's look at drivers. Drivers are fast-paced people. They're impatient. They're decisive. They're dominant. They're goal-oriented. They like control. They're cool and competitive. And there's my next slide. All right. So, drivers are great administrators. They are take-charge people. And they're like, if you know, remember your principal from your school, maybe your high school. A lot of times administrators are drivers because they're comprehensive, they see the big picture, but they also can make decisions. Here's what we need to do. So let me ask you this. How many of you, if we look at the 4 styles, how many of you would consider yourself, if you plotted those lines, you'd be an amiable? Okay? Good listeners, good counselors, A lot of hugging going on. Awesome. How many of you would be more expressive types? High responsive, pretty high assertive. How about analytics, our detectives, our problem solvers? Yes, good. We've got a good split in here. This is nice. And how many of you would consider yourself drivers? Okay, like Commando. Okay, good. All right. So let's look at some typical people and their mottos. Now, this is Michael from The Office. Would be an expressive person, an entertainer, garrulous, kind of goofy. Biggest fear that I wanted to point out here, that fear for expressives is rejection. Okay? So that's something to kind of keep in mind. The amiable. Now, these are probably not great illustrations if you got Toby there, because you're like, crap, I'm an amiable, I'm like Toby, on The Office? No, just go with it. Notice his motto, my office is your office. Welcome. You see how this might be different from person to person? Okay, their biggest fear is change. So once amiables lock into a system, they're very comfortable. But once change hits, they're, I'm not, help me. Sometimes takes some time. Analytics, detectives, here's Angela, put it in writing. I want to see proof. Don't just show me pictures, proof, okay? Their biggest fear is making mistakes, okay? But they don't want to make a mistake. So you're going to have to give them lots of information and detail to make sure that they feel comfortable. All right, drivers. Here's Dwight. They're the fighters. Their motto is do it now. Their fear is loss of control. I think Dwight fits that pretty well as far as